to the show today. We are talking about NBA specific rules. Sure, basketball has rules, and generally anywhere you are in the world, the rules are always going to be the same. Especially if you're just watching the game, it's just going to look like a basketball game. But every league has different rules, whether it's the NBA, FIBA, WNBA, or NCAA. So let's just start with the most simple aspect, the length of the game itself. So of all the leagues, the NBA has the longest games at 48 minutes and 12-minute quarters. FIBA does 40-minute games and 10-minute quarters, while the WNBA and NCAA do 20-minute halves. I'm a fan of a longer game for the same reason that I'm a fan of 7-game series. Because professional sports to me is all about consistency. When you're at the very highest point in any sport, generally the level of competition is all the same. Any NBA team can beat any NBA team on any given night. We see it all the time. You're never going to see an Ohio State versus Kent State situation. So the only thing that really separates one player or one team from another is who can do it the best for the most sustained length of time. In other words, who's the most consistent. And then there's the shot clock. In the NBA, it's 24 seconds, and if there's an offensive rebound, it goes to 14 seconds. The NCAA is different. It's 30 seconds, and if someone gets an offensive rebound, it's only 20 seconds at a reset. Personally, I think less time's better, right? You're gonna have more scoring if someone's forced to get a shot off sooner. And I have to imagine we all want to see more scoring and less burning clock, right? Although in the NBA, you can burn clock by inbounding the ball and then never touching it, like John Morant does here in this game against the Charlotte Hornets.
That streak lives on. 13 straight games for LaMelo Ball with 20 points.
They're just going to let the clock continue to run. Nobody moving up on John Morant, so the game clock just continues to run.
And the 8-second count doesn't start until he picks it up, and the Hornets...
The clock is running as someone inbounds the ball, but the shot clock doesn't start until someone touches it. In any sport with a clock, it's always in your best interest, if you're winning, to burn clock. Remember that if you're a person that is still playing competitive sports. Hasn't mattered to me in 10 years. The three-point line is further out in the NBA than it is in any other league. It's 23 feet and 9 inches away at the top of the key. And in the WNBA and FIBA, it's 22 feet and 2 inches. Which really impressed me when Sabrina Ionescu did the three-point competition with Steph Curry. She decided she was down to shoot from the NBA three-point line. And not only is it further out, but it's also a shot that she's not used to, but Steph is used to. It would have been interesting to see how the contest would have played out if Steph had to shoot from the dub three-point line. So give it up for Sabrina, she rules. Now let's talk about the goaltending rules. In FIBA, as soon as the ball hits the rim, the offensive team can put it right back in. In the NBA, the ball must leave the perimeter of the rim. Imagine a Venn diagram of the rim and the ball. There can't be any overlap. At first I thought the NBA should have this rule so players could just put the ball right back in and we could keep moving. But then I thought about it again, and I think some of the sickest putback dunks we ever had was because you can't just tip the ball right back in. You gotta let it escape for a bit. So NBA rules still rule. Now let's talk about timeouts. In FIBA, you get 2 timeouts in the first half and 3 in the second. But after the 2-minute mark, even if you have all 3 timeouts, you can only use 2. Which personally I like. I don't like it when the end of a game gets dragged out. The NBA does this too. In the NBA, you have 7 timeouts, which I think is at least 1 too many, right? But in the last 3 minutes, you can only use 2 timeouts. Personally, I'd like to see in the last 2 minutes that you only get 1 timeout. So you get 1 timeout for when the shot clock is off that you can take the ball from the half court. And that's it. No more timeouts. No more Lexus commercials. In FIBA, you get 5 fouls and you're fouled out. In the NBA, you get 6 fouls and you're fouled out, which makes sense because the game's a little longer. You also foul out if you get 2 technical fouls. I believe you get ejected as well. You can't even sit on the bench, which is kind of funny to think of a player getting a technical foul for delaying the game or maybe then hanging on the rim too long and then he's ejected. It's not even because he had a bad attitude or anything. He's just being so absent-minded that he can't stay in the stadium. In the NBA, if your team commits 5 fouls in a quarter, the other team goes into the bonus, meaning that even in a non-shooting foul, they still shoot 2 free throws. You probably knew that though. But did you know that offensive fouls don't count towards your fouls? Yeah, you probably knew that too. The reason most basketball leagues do this is so that the end of the game doesn't turn into a UFC match. If there wasn't this rule, the defense would just foul the offense until the shot clock ran out, or until all their players fouled out. The thing is though, for a lot of players, a free throw isn't an easy bucket, even though it's supposed to be. The league average free throw percentage is 75%. So at the end of the game, if you're not really worried about any of your players fouling out, you can try to force the ball to a player who can't shoot free throws and then foul him. So he shoots 2 free throws, probably misses them, and you get the ball right back. Teams would do this to players like Ben Wallace, DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond. It used to be that you didn't even have to foul the guy with the ball. You could foul a guy off ball who couldn't shoot. So teams would foul Shaq as soon as they inbounded the ball.
Again, off the ball.
That's Brent Berry that does that on Shaq. Berry picks that up.
I got to tell you something, Kevin. I think the competition committee have got to change this rule. You should never be able in basketball to foul off the ball.
So they changed that rule. Now if you foul the guy off the ball, that player gets 2 shots and they get the ball back, so it doesn't matter. Personally, I think there should be a double bonus, so that when your team is over 6 fouls in a quarter, then the other team shoots 2 free throws, but the first one is worth 2, because that's how many points that offensive play could have got the other team. Personally, I hate the foul game at the end of games. I think it sucks. But this video is not about that, and it's not about how I feel. There's also the offensive defensive 3-second rule. The offense can't just post up in the lane waiting for the ball for over 3 seconds. You need to leave the lane every 3 seconds with both feet, or else it's a turnover. This is a universal rule in basketball all over the world, in high school, elementary school, college, everywhere. It's a rule that's been in the NBA for almost its entire history. It didn't take long for people to realize a guy hanging out by the rim waiting for a lob pass was boring basketball. In 2001 though, the NBA decided to apply this rule to the defense too. The defense has to get out of the lane every 3 seconds, unless of course they're actively guarding a player. So when this happens, it's what you've probably heard referred to as illegal defense. That's what that is. And the penalty for illegal defense is a technical foul. If you don't know what the penalty for a technical foul is, the offense gets a free throw and then they get the ball right back. And if you don't know what a technical foul is, it's any infraction that doesn't involve physical play. It's usually unsportsmanlike behavior, you know, taunting, yelling at a ref, pushing a guy. But it can also be something like illegal defense, delaying a game, hanging on a rim, or pulling a Chris Webber.
The referee missed it. Webber brings it into the front court. They have no timeouts remaining.
He causes too many timeouts. It's a technical foul.
He called a timeout. Michigan doesn't have any.
Chris Webber is one of my favorite players, and he shouldn't be defined by that moment. But it's the best example of that type of technical foul. Sorry, Chris. Also, if a player hits 16 technical fouls in a season, they have to miss a game. This is something that Mavs have to worry about a lot, because Luka is the best player in the league that always gets to 16 technical fouls. So sometimes they actually want him to get a technical foul in a game where the following game is a game of no consequence. So he doesn't end up missing a game of consequence inadvertently by getting a technical foul the game before. Or he can just have a better attitude and not yell at the refs every time something doesn't go his way. Now, a flagrant foul is a foul that is either unnecessary and or excessive. A flagrant one is unnecessary contact. Here's an example. The penalty for a flagrant is 2 free throws and then they get the ball back. If you get 2 flagrant fouls in a game, you're ejected. A flagrant 2 is unnecessary contact that is excessive. Here's an example of that.
Peyton, right down the middle, he's fouled hard.
Punishment for a flagrant 2 is the same as a flagrant 1, but you are immediately ejected from the game. No second chances on this one. The last thing I want to talk about is the restricted area. The restricted area is a 4-foot circle around the center of the rim. If you are standing in that circle, and even if your feet are planted and the shooter runs into you, you committed a blocking foul. You cannot draw a charge in that space. This is to protect the offensive player when driving to the basket, so he doesn't get clipped and then land awkwardly. It happens all the time. Plus, we don't really want to see people take charges. We want to see guys get posterized. Alright, I'm sure I missed some rules, so let me know. I always reply, always down for that. Like the video if you liked it, dislike the video if you didn't like it. Depending on how you feel, be good to your mothers, eat a corn dog.